Well, I'm back. And you're not surprised because you don't know that I ever went away because you haven't been watching this video. So, uh, I'm doing something a little bit different here than I've done in previous videos. I just feel like it needs to be shared. This video is for someone who is thinks they're so far away from God that there's no way for them to get back to God. Uh, or it's for somebody who doesn't understand exactly that what their status with God is. And so, and I'm sure there's people out there who are in those circumstances because I know that there's been points in my life where at least the second one, I certainly was. I never thought I thought God was very transcendent, and I was far away from God in that way. But I didn't think I'd been such a terrible person that God wouldn't want to have anything to do with me because I was a good guy. So I was more the latter guy. But I know there are circumstances where people sometimes feel like they have gone through so much that they just can't get back to God. They don't attempt to come back to God. They think they're coming back to God. This is a comment on sanctification. I and I'm discussing it with you because I heard someone talking about Romans 8 today, and it just sort of struck me some of these things, and I wanted to share. I come from a background where there was this ongoing. It wasn't like a fight, it wasn't an angry discussion. It was just it was almost like a joke. That because my parents were Methodist and my grandmother was a Baptist, and there was this ongoing back and forth about, well, the Baptists believe that there's once saved always saved, and the Methodists believe that you can backslide. And I don't know what the beginning of that was. I think it might have been just a thing with my grandmother that she was when my father started going to Methodist church, she wanted to make sure he understood that the Methodists were wrong about that. I'm not sure. Uh, and I've sort of been on the fence about it most of my life. I was on the fence about it. It didn't really wasn't that serious an issue for me in my particular circumstance. I'm not saying it shouldn't have been. I'm just saying I didn't consider it to be a big major situation. If you're a ultra Calvinist, then and you're coming from things from that angle, then you think that no one has any free will, and so therefore, obviously, you can't backslide because or lose your salvation because God chose you. You don't have a choice. If you're Armenian, from Arminius, then you believe in free will, and if you're an ultra free will, then obviously God doesn't choose you, you choose God. Well, I think God chooses everybody. He wants us all. He's chosen us all. And the question is whether or not we're going along with the plan or not. So, um, you know, so you may feel like you're saved. I've come to this conclusion myself that there's people who, whatever their emotional moment was in life, now being a United Methodist, we don't have emotional moments. And or I was raised in this. I really, at the moment, United Methodism doesn't represent me very well, but that's my background, and so having an emotional experience wasn't a very important thing, and it was all good if you did, but it's not a mandatory thing. If you have an experience though where you are moved to come down to the front to the altar and accept God like you might in a Baptist church or in many other denominations, then I'm pretty sure that there are people who could have some moment in their life when they thought they were saved when they never were, but they did have an emotional moment that moved them. There's people who are in all kind of faiths who have emotional moments, and they're not saved because, of course, they're not even attempting to be Christian. There are people in what they think are Christian churches that are so busy doing having emotional moments that they don't realize they're not saved either. They're just serving themselves. So, what's key to Romans 8 to me, part of it, is that we are adopted by God. Now, if you live next door, you're a child who is. I'm just going to give you a situation to try to explain where I'm coming from. You're a child of your father died. Your earthly father died. You're a child. You live with your mother. You have no father. Next door is a kindly man. He's always good to you. He certainly is good to his own children. And you see him and you appreciate him. And whenever he can, he includes you in things with his family. When it's not out of order to do so. And so you say, this guy's like a father to me. Now, that's you choosing that this guy is like a father to you. Is this not him saying, I'm your father? It's you choosing to look up to him as a father figure. And certainly you can do that. Nothing wrong with doing that. But you're not adopted. You have no rights as his son. If he dies, you get none of the inheritance. If he's in the hospital, if and you're not a family member, you don't get to go in to be with the family. I'm sure, if you were a friend of his children and you went with them, maybe so. But I mean, if you just went on your own and said, I need to go in, and the nurse said, well, who are you? And you say you're a next door neighbor. They said, you can't go in. You're not a family member. You're not adopted. You're not part of the family. That's the circumstance of all of us. God has chosen us to be adopted, but we haven't gone through the adoption process. Okay? Being saved is when you're adopted. When you're saved, you're adopted. You can't lose your inheritance. And to me, this is a critical thing. I think a lot of people are confused about what sanctification is, because it's clear to me that sanctification is your situation once you have been adopted. So God reaches out his hands to you. He says, come to me. You say, Father, I'm yours. And he adopts you. And now you're entering the sanctification process. Now, many people may, if you're a young person, especially if you're a young person raised in a good family, goes to church all the time, etc., etc., and then let's say you go off to school or whatnot, and you get into drugs, and you make some really bad choices, and you just go down have a real bad patch of life. You can't hold a job. Maybe you can't keep your family together. Maybe you succumb to drugs or alcohol for years. Maybe you just are hedonistic. You go through a period where you just want to satisfy. You are confused. You run into new philosophies that tell you, whatever you want to do is what you ought to be doing. And so you choose, these people I respect these people. They're good people. And so, they're saving the earth. So therefore these are the people I want to be with. And, but these people are doing other things that are not godly. So you may choose a wrong path. You've chosen a wrong path, and yet you have not been thrown out of the family. You might not realize that. So, in your heart, though, you know who God is. all the time. And I hear stories about people like this all the time, often over my life. I hear stories of people who finally come back to God, but just were going down the wrong path. And actively and consciously going down the wrong path, and yet there was something inside of them saying, you're going down, you are in rebellion to God. You do know this. And then, one day you can come back to God. God is always there. We've got the parable of the prodigal son, where he goes off and squanders everything, and does whatever he wants to do. He lives a good Satanist life where do what thou wilt, and ends up in the pig pen, and even at that point, hey, I just will go back and live with my father. I can have a better life. That's not saying, oh, I love my father, I want to go back to him. He wasn't doing that. He was just going, hey, I need to go. It's just a better life. I'd be a servant of my father. This is just better than this slop pen here. Well, if you're one of those people, know that if you think that you can't come back to God, you can. You've not gone very far along with your sanctification. That's what's happened. Maybe you were going along with sanctification, and the Methodists of Wesley thought you could gain a perfect existence, perfection and sanctification. He believed that. I don't think it's likely. I appreciate that it's possible. I don't think it's likely that any human ever does that. But the point is, it's you're going along, like you're going up a ladder, right, or going up the steps. You're getting there. Well, if you decided to get into drugs and leave your wife and chase women and et cetera, whatever it is, or murder somebody and now you feel bad because you murdered them, whatever you did. If you've decided that has made you not worthy anymore, well, you're still just as worthy. None of us were ever worthy. The worthiness has nothing to do with it. It doesn't matter how good you were as a young person. You weren't worthy then. Have you forgotten that? You were never worthy. I was listening to Alistair Begg just a little bit here, just earlier. He was talking about Christ at the Gethsemane, and you see it in the Gospel of John, saying, Father, if I don't have to take this cup, then I'd prefer not to. Now, this is the cup of judgment. Well, he had to take the cup because he's taken that cup of judgment for all of us. That's the judgment that we all deserve. If he doesn't take it, we all go to hell. That's the biblical truth. But he takes it. And because he's taken it, then none of us are worthy. That's why he's taken the cup. We're not worthy. So it's bad as, doesn't matter what kind of hole you're in. It doesn't matter how far down the sanctification you've slid. The ladder you slid back down to the very bottom and maybe went to the basement. You're still adopted. You still are an heir. And you need to turn to God and claim that. But this is our free will. Our free will is to continually rebel against God, and all of us do. All of us do. We can rebel, or we can choose to become servants, to submit. I wrote a comment here after it, and this is my sort of a synopsis of where I'm at on this. When we truly turn to God and accept his embrace, we are adopted by him, and the remainder of our earthly life is a tutelage by the Holy Spirit as we strive with our Father and grow in our submission to his will. I think that's my synopsis of it. Now, this sermon I was listening to as that brought this up, brought this to mind. One thing he talked about was glorifying God, and this is relates to this as well. You know, the word glory comes, if you go back to the Greek, it's like weight, right? A good way that I think you can look at this, that I look at, and probably is relevant to the fact that it's Greek and it's, you know, how are they weighing things? So you have the scales, right? And so if something has a lot of weight, it has an effect. So whenever we're glorified, whatever we glorify is the thing that we're putting the most weight into. And everything else should be light, very light. Whatever is weighty is what glorifies, what we're glorifying. So is our attention, is our energies, is the weight of our being focused on God, or is the weight of who we are focused on other things that satisfy ourselves? See, we can choose to do all kind of things. We can do all kind of good things. This is the problem with, there's a lot of people, now, to the other person I'm talking to that I haven't really addressed, you can do all kind of good things, but you're satisfying yourself. If you're not doing it for the will of God, then you're just doing it for yourself. You're not glorifying God. It doesn't matter how many dollars you give to the person on the corner, or to how many meals you serve to Meals on Wheels, or whatever it is that you do that's a good thing that you feel good about, or that maybe you think other people feel good about you. That's weight for yourself. That's glorifying yourself. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. Certainly, you can glorify God by doing those things too, if the reason you're doing it is you're submitting to God. That this is a way you glorify God. That certainly, you know, works out well. But I'm just trying to make us think about this. Where are we with our sanctification? Are we adopted, or are we just pretending that we're part of the family that we never got adopted into? Yeah, those people over there who go to church, they do all these good things. So if I do good things, I'm just as good as them. Well, you may well be. There's a lot of people in church who are not very. I'm not sure they're saved either. A lot of people, but it's not the doing the good will. It's not doing good deeds that saves you. That's works. It's submitting to God, glorifying God in all that we do. And if you are in the gutter, you can. It's your free will. Crawl out of the gutter and seek to glorify God, and just get back on the road to sanctification. Anyway, hope it's helpful. As I always tell people, seek truth. And if you're really looking for truth, you'll find it. Have a good day.